I didn't think I could be more disappointed than I was last week with the Eagles. But they proved me very wrong. I mean, at this point, I'm just going to talk about them because that's what I do. But I'm not going to be happy about it. So let's just get right into this. Welcome back to the Eye Test Takes podcast. Sorry, I have no juice for this right now. I'll probably get a little bit more fiery by the end of me talking about the Eagles because they pissed me off. But this is week 11, episode 11 of the Eye Test Takes podcast. I appreciate you guys tuning in. So the slate of games I watched this week was that slop of a game between the Eagles and the Browns. Then I watched Indianapolis versus Green Bay, Kansas City versus the LA Rams, the Las Vegas Raiders, and then Tampa Bay versus the LA Rams. Let's just get right in this because this was just a disgusting game from the jump on two different levels. And that was because the weather was so disgusting in that game. Philly versus the Browns, they were in Cleveland. It's been like that the last 3 weeks in Cleveland. It's just been a disgusting weather game between wind and rain. But in this game in particular, it was just pouring rain. Did not let up one single time during the game. It was a downpour the entire length of the game. And it made for a pretty boring game. On top of that, both teams played kind of bad for the most part. Obviously, the Eagles played worse than the Browns. The Browns won. But there were some spots where you just like Baker Mayfield was not very sharp, to say the least, in the game. So it made for just a not very good watch of a football game. But let's just kind of get into some of the things I saw in this game. To start, really, it looked good from the Eagles offense on the first drive. I was like, man, this is awesome. Doug Peterson, maybe he's taking some of the criticism that, some of the media members and maybe some of the coaches came to him and said, hey, we should probably run the ball more. And they took that to heart, and we ran the ball straight down Cleveland's throat. And Miles Sanders looked fantastic. He was explosive once again, ripping off 5 to 6 yards per carry. And we get down to the 5-yard line, and in perfect Philadelphia Eagles standard, they fumble. Miles Sanders fumbles, coughs the ball up right there on the 5-yard line. Momentum out the window. Browns take it 95 yards. And then the Eagles actually stuffed the Browns on the 1-yard line on fourth down on that next possession. And I was thinking, okay, maybe the Eagles get the momentum back right here. That was kind of a big deal. The Eagles start moving again. They're moving the ball pretty well. Carson Wentz is actually throwing the ball pretty well. And then that play that pretty much everybody's seen at this point, and everybody's blaming it on Carson Wentz, but it's like probably 55% his fault. But realistically, freaking Dick Rod over on the right side of the O-line, the tight end, I don't know if you guys get that inside joke or not, but his name's Richard Rodgers, so everybody naturally calls him Dick Rod. This dude misses his assignment when blocking, and so Carson Wentz, he probably should have just pulled the trigger on a route to Rager that seemed to come open, but he hesitated a bit, which is something he has done pretty much all season because he's a broken quarterback at this point. And he gets hit in the back. The ball gets floated up in the air because he was actually trying to get it to the check down, which was Miles Sanders. And Sione Takitaki takes it for a pick six. And from then on, it was just more of the same we've seen all season from the Eagles. It was just Carson Wentz is broken. He is hesitant. He doesn't sling the ball into the holes he used to because he's just second guessing every decision he makes at this point because everybody has let him down. And I'm not excusing Wentz for this, but nobody has helped him. Doug Peterson's game calling, or his play calling, his play designs, everything is just so stale and horrible still coming out of the game where everybody is just taking a crap on him in the media, saying you got to do something else, you got to at least run the ball. They went away from it in the second half, and it was just more of the same, just making Wentz do things that he's just not comfortable with at this point because he's unconfident in everything he does. So it was just a bad game. But really, in the first half, the Eagles' defense surprisingly was able to kind of stuff that two-headed monster of the Cleveland Browns, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I was pretty, happy about that. I didn't expect that to happen. I really thought they were going to get steamrolled coming into this game. And they were pretty good in the first half. By the second half, though, they really just wore them down, that two-headed monster. That's the point of it, actually. Kevin Stefanski deploys that offense as perfectly as he should, basically, because it's just run the ball, play action, boots, stuff like that from Baker Mayfield, and that's exactly what he's good at doing at this point in his career, because he just hasn't been playing super, super well either. But yeah, it was a bad game, man. The Eagles disappoint me once again, and I really need the Eagles to evaluate themselves at the end of this season and do it well. And if that takes me watching losing football for the rest of the season, like, I will willingly do that. If it means the Eagles need to lose every single game for the rest of the season for there to be changes be made at the end of the season by Jeffrey Lurie, I hope he can look at it objectively and say, man, this was just a terrible, dysfunctional year, and changes need to be made, and maybe the coaches are gone, the GM's gone, somebody's gone. Carson Wentz cannot be gone. There's a lot of people out there saying, just get rid of Wentz, you drafted Hurts. That's part of the problem. Howie Roseman drafted a quarterback in the second round, knowingly just giving Carson Wentz a contract that they cannot get out of until 2 years down the road. And it still, if they try to trade him or anything of that nature, there is a dead cap hit of like $60 million. So that is just financially insane. It's just not a possibility. There's just no possible way anybody's going to sign off on that from the Eagles side of the bench there. So basically, I'm going to need a new head coach, a new GM, and this is the way if I just need an Eric Bieniemy, a Joe Brady. I know Joe Brady's super young, but he looks super promising. Arthur Smith out of Tennessee, he looks really good. I could go on a list of OCs. It's going to be a good offseason for some teams looking for head coaches because the offensive coordinator talent is plentiful this offseason, or is going to be plentiful this offseason. But yeah, I need one of those guys as the head coach because Doug Peterson seems like he has run his course. He looks like a lost puppy out there without Frank Reich by his side. And that's just the reality of it right now. And it's sad, but like, I appreciate the Super Bowl, like I've said in previous podcasts, but like, something's got to give at this point. And then I need a GM that has an actual eye for talent because Howie Roseman in the last couple years, like, setting aside the 2017, I know brushing aside the Super Bowl year for him I know that's something you're not supposed to do necessarily, but like, at the same time, that was such an anomaly, I believe. It was a one-hit wonder. Everything hit in that offseason from free agency to the draft. Everything hit that year. And since then, it has been awful. It's been terrible decisions on both sides where it's free agents that just don't pan out. Draft picks not panning out. I mean, there's a lot of players the Eagles drafted that are no longer even in the league in the last 2 years. And that's saying something. That's terrible. And then thirdly, I'm going to need whoever becomes the new head coach or QB coach or offensive coordinator to take Carson Wentz under their wing and strip everything he's ever known about football and rebuild this man because he is broken mentally and maybe even physically, but definitely actually physically if you think about mechanics, because some of his throwing mechanics right now, like his feet are out of whack a lot of times when he's throwing the ball, and that's coaching. Like, there are times where Carson Wentz is fine, and there are times where he just slips into these bad habits. But I need somebody that's going to rebuild Carson Wentz because I know he can be a great quarterback, and I just think wasting him and his prime years is just such a disservice to the NFL and especially Eagles fans at this point. But yeah, that's pretty much my rant on the Eagles. I'm pretty much over that. I mean, the Browns won the game. I mean, who cares? The Browns are second at AFC North. I mean, good for you, Browns fans. Honestly, like, you guys deserve a winning season. And I think you guys might actually be better than the Ravens. They're a little iffy right now. But yeah, Browns just really took it to the Eagles in the second half and really pulled away with that win. It really wasn't even that close of a game, even though the score may say it at the end of the day. But let's just get into the next game. The second game I watched was Green Bay versus Indianapolis. First half, Aaron Rodgers, man, he was sharp. And it was all Green Bay in the first half for the most part. And the tide kind of changed in the second half because I think Frank Reich, who, actually kind of makes some halftime adjustments, unlike his former counterpart there in Doug Peterson in Philadelphia. Anyway, so Frank Reich in the second half, after the Packers pretty much dominated the first half of that game, I think Frank Reich went to the halftime and was thinking, dude, why didn't we just run the ball more? What were we thinking? Like, the Green Bay run defense is one of the worst in all of football. What were we doing? And they stuck to the run. It was like 9 straight runs coming out of the half, and they went straight down the field. And, I mean, they didn't, get a score there, but it was just the fact that they were able to realize that. And then throughout the second half, the Colts just chipped away by just running the ball, passing with Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers was super accurate in this game. He played a really good game. I mean, he can't move anymore, but he can still put the ball right in between the numbers for those receivers. He's just got great timing and rhythm. But basically, the Colts ended up just chipping away at the lead and running the ball effectively. Rodrigo Blankenship just went off, especially in fantasy. If anybody had him, you saw that. I was playing against him, so that's why I knew that. And I watched the game, obviously. But anyways, basically, the thing that kind of turned the tide in the second half, though, was more or less Packers special teams, because the guy fumbled on a kickoff and it gave the Colts momentum. That's when they got the game really close. And then it was basically Colts go up. Aaron Rodgers got to make something happen. And of course he does, because he's Aaron Rodgers. And they kick a field goal to make it go to overtime. And then coin flip, Packers get the ball. Everybody at home's probably thinking Aaron Rodgers going to drive straight down, get this game winner, and everybody's going to be able to go home quickly. And then, of course, everybody's probably seen it on social media this week. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, he gets a little screen, like a tunnel screen pass, and he fumbles the ball. Colts get it back. They kick a field goal, win the game. And he's getting death threats on social media, so he was kind of going off on people on there, and then people, I don't know. It was just kind of a back and forth this early in this week so far. But yeah, honestly, I think the Packers really should have won that game. The Colts are still a good team. Their defense is good. They scare me on offense because it's just not very consistent. Jonathan Taylor is okay. I don't think you can super rely on Naheem Hines to be your number one back, and he is better, I think, at this point than Jonathan Taylor. Phillip Rivers has his days where he's really good, and in this game he was good. But then he has his days where he just wants to throw 2 picks and lose you a game by himself. So they're just a little above average, a little above, just everybody else in the league because of, their defense. But they're not a great team by any stretch. This was actually the first game I got to really hone in on them and watch them. And they were okay, but I didn't see anything super special. They're definitely a playoff contender, definitely not a Super Bowl contender at this point. But then the Packers, man, they found a way to blow this one. And once again, I think they're also just a playoff contender at this point. And the only reason they are is because Aaron Rodgers is so good, because that defense is still bad. And then I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender either. So that's pretty much all I have for the Green Bay versus Indianapolis game. It was a good game overall. Really, it was a good one to watch. Other than in the end of regulation there, where there was right at the 2-minute warning, Indianapolis had like a billion penalties. It was awful. I mean, I think like 30 seconds went off the clock, but I'm pretty sure it took like 15 minutes for like that whole sequence to happen. It was really stagnant at that point, but it still wasn't a bad game to watch. Anyways, to the next game, Kansas City versus Las Vegas Raiders. Derek Carr looked the best he has all season. He was slinging the rock. He didn't care. He was out there, man. I was proud of him. Like, he has made his way all the way back to being a good quarterback. I'm not going to say he's great yet, but he played great in that game. If he can do that more consistently, dude, he's going to be right back up there where he was in that year where they went 12-4, and they looked like they were going to go into the playoffs with some momentum, but he broke his leg, which is really unfortunate. But yeah, dude, he looked unbelievable. He has a great rapport with Darren Waller. Darren Waller's a beast. They were connecting everywhere. Josh Jacobs is ridiculous once again. But basically, the Raiders are a perfect match for Kansas City. You saw it in the first matchup where they actually were able to win the game. You saw it in this matchup. The Raiders are just that team. They're so physical, and you can just tell they're not afraid of Kansas City. And I feel like a lot of teams that step on that field against Kansas City think, oh, crap, how are we going to score with this team? Like, they're a track team, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like that's like part of the John Gruden like attitude of the Raiders is John Gruden's going to, even if like it's not a possibility, like John Gruden's going to make his team think that they're the best team on the field no matter what. And that's a great trait for a head coach to have at this point. He really gets his guys to rally around him and play hard for him. And that's the only thing you can ask, really. And then obviously execution. But like the emotional side of the game is a huge part of being a head coach, and John Gruden has that down pat for sure. But really this game came down to, because it was like a Big 12 game, and people on Twitter were going off on it saying, dude, there's zero defense in this game. And I mean, it was a fun watch, don't get me wrong. But you want to see a little bit of defense sometimes. But anyways, this game came down to who had the ball last, and it ended up being Kansas City, and they only had a minute 30, I believe it was. And Pat Mahomes, like, the Raiders got Mahomes, like kind of like how the Chargers did earlier this year. If you give Pat Mahomes time, if you give Aaron Rodgers time, if you give Russell Wilson time, more likely than not, they're going to go right down the field and get a field goal or a touchdown, whatever they need to win that game. And that's exactly what happened. It's just Mahomes being ridiculous. You can't really do too much about it, especially if your defense is just kind of okay, middle of the road, like the Raiders defense is. So that's pretty much what that game came down to. Really fun game to watch. And I'll make one last point here about Derek Carr, because, like I said, I was really impressed with him. Derek Carr gave me hope for Carson Wentz in this game, because if you look at it, their career paths are kind of similar, where they had very early success in their career. You see Derek Carr had that 12-4 season that I kind of alluded to earlier. And he was like, it was MVP consideration that year, broke his leg, could not play in the playoffs. Same type of thing with the Wentz. Second year, has a MVP type campaign where they go 13-3. And he locks up the number 1 seed for the team in that game in LA against the Rams, tears his ACL right there, and wasn't able to play in the playoffs. And then Derek Carr, after his season, kind of had some down years. Like, what didn't feel like he was all the way back from the injuries. He was pretty lackluster, just was struggling kind of a lot. And that's when, John Gruden eventually kind of became head coach, and then kind of took him under his wing, and you saw him improve year after year after that. And then same type of thing with Wentz. Like, he came back and he was okay, but he still didn't feel right. It just didn't look right with him for that year after. and still had some more injury stuff to deal with. And then he's been struggling. He struggled for the first half of last year, turned it on a little bit at the end of last year, and has just been struggling this year. So it's almost a very similar type thing that Derek Carr and Carson Wentz have gone through. And Derek Carr, obviously, like in this season, has brought it all the way back. He has just raised from the dead. He is a good, competent quarterback once again, and it gives me confidence that somebody can fix Carson Wentz the way that John Gruden fixed Derek Carr. I just think Carson Wentz needs a new, just offensive everything. So that's just the last point I wanted to give there, considering Derek Carr and the Raiders and Kansas City game there. Last game that I watched was Tampa Bay versus the LA Rams, and this game was all about Sean McVay and that entire offense operating and executing at a very, very high level. Cooper Kupp just run after catch in this game. Like, I know he's not like always been the craziest yak guy, but dude, this game he was breaking tackles, just breaking ankles. He was unbelievable. And then Robert Woods was ridiculous as well. And I appreciated that considering the fact that I have him at fantasy. So, I mean, they went off. That offense looked seamless. There was times where, Jared Goff was under some pressure because, that D-line's pretty talented still. But for the most part, it's like the Rams didn't even have a defense out there. They just went about their business running the scheme to perfection pretty much. But yeah, that offense is hard to stop when they're running it to a T like that. And then something to point out with Tampa Bay's offense, it doesn't seem like there's a real rhyme or reason for anything they do. It seems like Tampa Bay cannot get in a rhythm doing anything at this point. Tom Brady still seems to be out of sync. You would have thought by now, and I know they missed training camp because of COVID and all the off-season stuff they had to deal with. He doesn't have the rapport like he did the 20 years he was in New England. But, dude, you'd think somebody had a rapport with him at this point. But it just seems like he can't get on the same page with his guys. It's just very herky-jerky going up and down the field. It's like one good drive and then a terrible drive and another kind of good drive and gets you a field goal and then a terrible drive. I don't know. It's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, like every other drive, and it's weird. And there was one thing that stood out to me in this game that I think is kind of the stem of some of their problems as well, and it's really a coaching flaw by Bruce Arians, and it's the fact that Ronald Jones fumbles, and he's done it earlier in the season, and basically any time a running back for Bruce Arians fumbles, he gets benched. And I just think that's such a, I don't know, it's just not the way to go about it, I believe, because then you establish no rhythm with your offense, and he's obviously the best running back on that team right now. Leonard Fournette cannot catch, and I know Ronald Jones is not the best guy to catch out of the backfield either, but it just stunts the offense too much to bench Ronald Jones like he did. Like, he basically got zero run after the fumble. And obviously, if you saw like the Carolina game and stuff like that, Rojo was the reason why they just absolutely steamrolled them. As long as I really believe Tampa Bay, if they were just to stick with Rojo and just run him and be consistent with it, let him get into a rhythm and just keep him on the field, their offense would be so much better. I think people would be running more open downfield because of it. I mean, the run game obviously opens up the pass game and vice versa. But I just think that's kind of a coaching flaw with Bruce Arians, where he just likes to bench a guy because he makes a mistake. But I think that really just stunts the offense for that game, and then you just lose a game because of that. I just don't think that's great. But then, and we're gonna go right here, just Tom Brady making terrible decisions with the ball. We've never really seen it at this clip before, and I don't know if it's him trying to force the new offense he's in, because Bruce Arians, has that kind of very vertical passing offense, and he just wants to, be the guy that you can operate it, and he wants to push the ball down the field. And I understand that because he has like 18 All-Pros on offense. I mean, he is an all-star team for an offense, and he probably feels the pressure like, man, that we should be the number one offense in all of football, but I need to do this and that. And so he's kind of forcing it. And I mean, just some of the throws he's making, some of the windows he's trying to throw into, you just kind of like scratch your head, like, why are you throwing the ball to that guy? Exactly, like right now, like especially like the last ball, like you're throwing a ball basically in triple coverage to Cameron Brate out of all guys. Like, I don't know. It just seems funky. Like, I assume, like, and I've been saying this pretty much all season, so maybe I'm just like an idiot for this, but I assume Tampa Bay will figure it out, but it still hasn't looked good. And I mean, I don't know what they have to do to kind of get back on track to where they become dominant, but like their receivers are ridiculous. Their offense in general should be very good. Their defense should be good. They are actually like, it's impressive to see how much they miss Vita Vea in that middle of that defense. I would have never thought that they missed him this much, but he was apparently very paramount in that defense. So they miss him. He's not coming back this year, so they're going to have to figure out a way to just do it without him. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for Tampa Bay versus LA Rams. Obviously, LA gets the win there. But that's all I have. I appreciate you guys listening to my ranting of the Eagles because they pissed me off. And I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Follow us on Twitter at iTestTakes. Follow us on Instagram at iTestTakes. Hit the subscribe button. And we appreciate you guys listening. We'll see you next week. Peace.